Hey, Mike with Nerd Problems Gaming here, the channel where we go through the good and bad of everything nerdy to make sure you spend your time on the best of the best. In today's video, I'll be doing a review of Dragon Quest V, so let's get into it. So Dragon Quest V is, in my opinion, one of the best Dragon Quest games there is. There's a lot of things that are great about it, and I think it's often overlooked in the series because it didn't come to the US for a number of years. And so the game itself actually was first launched on the Super Nintendo, but it was a Japan-only release. I guess they had problems translating it and problems with the coding, bringing that over. And then they even did a remake of the game on PlayStation 2, and then they made a remake of the game on Nintendo DS, and that was finally when it actually came to the US with a full English translation. Now what's cool though is that with a little bit of searching online, you actually can find a translated version of the game on Super Nintendo. And so that was the most recent playthrough I did of the game. And that's mostly what we'll be talking about in this video and touching on the other versions a little bit here and there. But I think one of the big things that really stands out about this game is the storyline of the game. And so in this game, you follow the hero throughout the story, and it's basically him in search of finding the legendary hero, saving his family, and ridding the world of evil. And one thing that's a little bit cool with this game too is just how the story is set up, where you play throughout different sections of the main hero's life. So when you start the game, you're playing, he's just a child, 6 years old, hanging out with his dad, traveling the world, searching for artifacts of the legendary hero. And then flash forward later in the game, you're playing as him as a teenager, and he's been actually kidnapped and forced into slavery, and you play as him escaping from that, and then his adventures of trying to continue his quest that his dad started, as well as finding his mom. And then again, you continue to play, he gets older, he meets his wife, starts a family, and so you play through these different ages of the hero to complete the storyline as you play. And so I've never really seen that necessarily in a game before, where it kind of jumps through different aspects of the character's life. Usually most games take place in maybe a year or two window, but not really like an entire character's lifespan, starting from when they were a kid and to them being a parent and playing the game, including their kids as well. One thing that's also neat about this game is that, like I said, they've done a ton of remakes, and they even recently released a Netflix movie based on the storyline of this game. And so if you're looking for that, it's under Dragon Quest Your Story on Netflix, and I definitely would recommend watching that if you're interested in this game, or maybe you've played this game in the past and you want to see like a movie version of the storyline. They do a great job of it there. They do change a little bit of things here and there, but for the most part, it sticks true to the story, and you follow along the adventure, following the life of the main hero. There is also kind of a cool twist at the end of the movie. I won't spoil what it is, but it's something worth checking out as well if you like this game. Or even if you're just a fan of Dragon Quest games in general, I would recommend checking out that movie. Now the game itself follows more of a traditional turn-based RPG, where you're not going to have a lot of advanced strategies necessarily, or advanced level up mechanics that maybe more modern day RPGs incorporate. So you start with your base characters, and then they will level up and then reach specific new abilities. Also, when you're finding equipment, you basically just have the various types of armor and weapons that you can equip, and then you just equip them. There's not really anything extra necessarily that goes with them. A few weapons here and there and a few pieces of armor do have special abilities that you can activate when you use them as an item, but most of the weapons that you find in the game are just going to improve your stats when you equip them. One thing that's also neat about this game is it introduces a caravan type system where you can actually recruit monsters that you fight out in the field in this game. To my understanding, this was the first Dragon Quest game that did this, and they implemented offshoots of this concept in things like Dragon Warrior Monsters in future games. But it's kind of a neat mechanic where you can build your own team by recruiting various monsters, including the human characters that you acquire along the way. Another neat aspect to the fighting style of this game is that you can interchange characters every single turn of the battle if you choose to. So if you have various monsters that have abilities that you need to use at that time, you can switch out your party, change it on the fly, and add these monsters in and take them out once they do the attacks, or again, whatever the case might be. And so that was a pretty cool strategy that they implemented in this game as well. There's a ton of different monsters you can recruit. They each have their own abilities, spells that they learn, equipment that they can equip as well. So it really gives you a lot of variety to change your strategy as needed and really create your ideal team as you play. One of the downsides with this in the Super Nintendo version though is the fact that you can only have a party of 3 players. In the remake versions, they've increased that to 4. And I kind of wish the original had 4 as well, because for the most part in the story, you have 4 main characters that you acquire throughout the game. And so when you're limited to only 3, it's a little weird because you feel like you're always putting some characters on the shelf from your main team. But again, since you can flip them out whenever you want in battle, it's not necessarily the end of the world. But I do wish the Super Nintendo version had that 4-player option of your main party, like the later re-release versions do. One thing that might be a little frustrating for some players going back and playing the Super Nintendo version of this game is how kind of the equipment works, where each player has their own individual inventory and they can only hold so many items. And so when you get new items, if one character's slot is full, it just simply goes to the next character's inventory. And so that can be a little annoying, where again, you can only hold so many items. So you have to like trade items away from a character and then trade another item back to that character if it's something that they can use. And so that can be a little weird and clunky in a sense compared to maybe more modern RPGs when you play. This also adds an interesting mechanic as well, because when you use items in battle, like I said, some of them have abilities that you can use, but again, it's only going to be able to be activated by the character that's holding that item. So that really adds to the strategy of the game, but it can be frustrating at times as well, where for example, if that character dies or isn't in your active party, you don't really have a way to use that item as you're playing. Another kind of interesting aspect too is that it's a little bit hard to know what items actually do and if they have special abilities. You have a certain spell called Identify, which will allow you to get a little bit more info on the item. And sometimes it says it can be used in battle or gives you a little special ability, but other times it does that and doesn't really explain what the ability is. So that can be a little confusing and frustrating at times. Or again, I think more modern RPGs would just list it right there instead of kind of having to go through all these hoops and steps and then trial and error to get to use the items. One thing that I definitely love about the game though is the classic music. And so I don't know if all of the songs necessarily originated in this Dragon Quest V, but definitely some of the key iconic ones certainly came out of this game, and you get a lot of the classic great music as you play. So that's one thing I really like about this game. You also get the amazing artwork by Akira Toriyama, the artist from all the other Dragon Quest games, Dragon Ball Z and more. And so you get to see that flair throughout the game of all the enemies and the sprites as you play. So that's really fun to see as well. Now for me, I really like a grindy turn-based RPG, but some people maybe don't necessarily like that aspect in an RPG. So there is certainly points of this game where you maybe need to grind a little bit to be able to get past the next area or to defeat an enemy boss as you play. But the good thing is that if you ever die completely in this game, you're sent back to a village, you're sent back to the church, and they revive your character. You do lose half of your money, which is a little frustrating, but you keep all your experience that you got up to that point, and then you can get to that boss and try it again. So it's not necessarily the end of the world, but it might require you re-going through dungeons multiple times to be able to beat that boss. One thing that's also pretty cool is that this is the first Dragon Quest game that introduced a special bonus dungeon after you beat the game. So once you beat the game the first time, go all the way to the end credits, wait till it says the end. And then if you restart the game again and jump back into your game, there's actually an added bonus dungeon that has an incredibly hard boss at the end and some new additional treasures you can find along the way. One thing I found that was a little bit weird though in the Super Nintendo version is that when I did start to attempt this bonus dungeon after beating it, for some reason it kept my levels, but it totally reset the final dungeon besides this bonus dungeon. So I lost all my equipment in that and had to go back through and do that a second time because I definitely wasn't going to tackle the extra bonus dungeon without the best equipment going into it. So that was a little bit weird. Another thing that's kind of neat too is that if you beat this bonus boss in a certain number of turns, to my understanding, you get a special ending or something extra cool, but it's kind of almost ridiculous how many turns. When I first beat him, I beat him in 50. And to my understanding, you need to beat him in 20 to get this bonus special ending scene. And so I don't think most people are necessarily going to want to grind it out. I had to grind out a couple different hours of just leveling up to actually be able to beat this guy for the first time. So I don't think your average player is going to necessarily sit through hours of grinding to level up your characters to be able to beat them in that certain number of turns. But it is kind of a fun challenge to take on that extra boss when you're going through after you beat the original game. But again, guys, I would definitely recommend checking out Dragon Quest V if you haven't. There's all kinds of versions out there. So if you want to play it on the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation 2, or the DS, there's various ways to find it and play the game. But let me know in the comments below if you've played Dragon Quest V, which version you like the best, if you've played many of them, and how you think it holds up compared to other Dragon Quest games. I'd love to know in the comments below. But if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications to get the latest updates of new nerd videos we put out here. And if you'd like to help us support the channel, pick out content and more, become a patron of ours over at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Patreon. And if you'd like to plug into our live streams and Let's Plays we do on the channel, you can follow us on Twitch at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Twitch. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.